Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live. Of course, we're a day later today, and that is because yesterday YouTube was having, some issues in the afternoon. It actually wouldn't let me log out. So I've got a couple different YouTube accounts. We live stream on a different account than the one that I'm usually logged in as. So I couldn't log out to create the stream. So Google evidently got it fixed. So we're streaming one day later. And well, the first thing that I want to do is head out to the greenhouse, which right now it's a little bit rainy outside, but I actually recorded the greenhouse update yesterday and it was nice and sunny. And you're in for a surprise with this week's greenhouse update because there is some insane color right now in the greenhouse. So let's head out to the greenhouse and check that out. Today I'm here at our newest greenhouse where we have a bunch of different finished items that are just starting to bloom and look amazing. So let's take a closer look. So here we have some town baskets. So these are the baskets that you see on light poles in different towns. And we grow for quite a number of different towns and communities here in the Ohio River Valley. So it's hard to tell whose baskets these are, but there's actually some right down here. They're starting to head this way also. So these baskets are going to the city of Cerrito. And a fun fact is Cerrito is named after Ceres, which is the Greek god of the harvest. These are just some gorgeous marigolds. Almost need sunglasses to look at that. And here we have some beautiful impatiens. And just over on the other side, we have vinca that's just starting to bloom. And right down here, these are zucchini. Which, all this zucchini right here, that's what? That's like a billion zucchini. I mean, one plant is enough. You don't need to buy a whole flat, just one, and you're going to have zucchini for you, your entire family, your neighbors, the whole community, really. I mean, one plant's enough, but yeah, flats of zucchini. And I just found some more veggies. These are pickling cucumbers. Actually, most of this row down through here is all pickling cucumbers. And all of these, because of the size of the seed, they all get sown by hand. A couple weeks ago when we were down at the field house, we saw 4.5-inch pots of coleus. If you're looking to fill in a larger area with coleus, I would recommend going with bedding flats like this because you're getting 32 plants per flat. They might be a little bit smaller starting off, but they'll definitely fill in and look beautiful. And if you're looking for a petunia that will spread out and maybe trail down over the side of a basket or fill in a flower bed, wave petunias make a great choice for that. They stay kind of low to the ground and they spread out and create, well, just beautiful waves of color. Look at that bloom. It is just gorgeous. So that's a quick update of what's happening here at our newest greenhouse at the upper end of Mason. So during the video, Andrea had a question. She said, when we have vinca, hibiscus, and mandevilla. So the Vinca, actually right there where we were looking at the impatiens, directly over my shoulder, the other half of that entire bay was full of Vinca. And it just wasn't blooming yet, so I didn't put it in the video. Um, but we'll be having Vinca available a little bit closer to Mother's Day. Um, it is a lot less frost tolerant, so we don't want to be putting out plants right now for sale that if we get a frost or a freeze, it would kill them. Um, and also, hibiscus and mandevilla are both tropicals. So we'll have those in right around Mother's Day because May 10th is usually the projected last frost date for our region. Um, so, yeah, right now we're growing them. They're just now starting to bloom, and they'll be heading out to our stores in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. So, uh, also, before I move on to our next segment, you can, of course, find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and we're also over on TikTok. And most of those places you can find us at Bob's Market. So you can check that out. What I wanted to cover this week is kind of something that we've covered a few videos of already, and that is the hydroponics system that I have at my house. Um, so we've talked a little bit about hydroponics this winter. It's a great wintertime topic because it's gardening indoors. Um, but what I did in the last video, there we go. I think my mic was a little hot, so hopefully I wasn't blowing up your phone if you're watching, or hopefully you didn't have earphones in. Um, with hydroponics, the systems have to be taken apart and cleaned periodically. So in the last video, we completely disassembled the hydroponics system and cleaned it. And that kind of gave you an idea of how it goes together and how it works. In this video, we've got the system back together. Now I need to get water in it and all the nutrients and the pH right and everything. So that's kind of the second half of setting up a hydroponic system. So I thought I would share that process. It turned out to be a pretty long video. It's about 30-40 minutes. So if you've got questions, I'll be watching the chat. So I'll either jump in and reply in the chat, or I'll kind of wait till the end and jump back in and discuss some of the questions. But yeah, the video edited ended up being about 40 minutes. The reset and getting all the water in it and everything actually took me about 4 hours. And that's because something that I left out of the video, just for the sake of it's something that normally doesn't happen, is I got the tank completely full, went to turn it on, and my pump was dead. So the pump had actually broken for the hydroponic system. And luckily, that is a common thing that happens because they run pretty much continuously. So I always have a spare pump on hand, but I had to like reach my arms in, and yeah, it was a whole mess. So you also notice at the start of this video there's daylight, and then all of a sudden it's dark. um, but yeah, let's jump in and look at part 2 of resetting the hydroponics system and getting plants in it. This evening, I am getting my hydroponic system back up and running. In our last video, I took the system apart and cleaned it, And tonight I'm going to refill it with water, get the nutrients in it, and then plant these seedlings over my shoulder into the hydroponics system. So right now I have a hose in the fill hole, and it's running into the utility room right here off of this room. And I have a valve there, so let's go turn the water on and start filling it up. Okay, so I got the tank mostly filled. The next thing that I need to do is add in the nutrients. And something cool with Let Us Grow is Jax actually provides the nutrients for it. They use their Part A, Part B nutrient system for hydroponics. And Jax is the exact same fertilizer that we use here at Bob's. And it's also what we have for sale at our stores. During the initial setup of the system, it calls for 4 scoops of nutrient A and 4 scoops of nutrient B. And each scoop is 1 tablespoon. But then once you have it up and running, on the back of the nutrients, it has a chart based off the size of your system, which I have the 36 plant system over here. And also whether it's spring, summer, fall, winter, or indoors, which is my case. But something that I found is I also follow the Jax nutrient schedule, and I do that by measuring the EC, which let me get the focus there. So I'm shooting for a number in the parts per million measurement, which is the bottom row there, around 1050. And I measure that using an EC meter. So I can get a water sample and test it with this. It also gives me the temperature of the water, which I record. And then the other thing that I'll have to do is test the pH, which we'll get to that. This is a part A and B system because if you were to mix these chemicals together at the beginning in a really high concentration, it would cause the iron to precipitate out. And we don't want that, so we mix them up separately, add them to the system, let it run for a little while to mix it, and then go from there. To help the nutrients dissolve, I have hot water. And also I'm using hot water to help bring the temperature up in the tank. I just added about 20 gallons of ice cold tap water. So right now it's about 52 degrees. I try to keep it around 70, but initially a little bit cooler temperature won't hurt the plants that much. So, all right, first we have part A, and I actually just got new bags of nutrients, and I noticed they've actually changed the packaging from kind of these paper bags to a white bag. And I'm starting to run out, so I kind of dig around here at the bottom of the barrel. Alright, so that's 1. 2. 3. And 4. And now we stir. This is going to take a while to get these nutrients to dissolve. And what I'm also going to do is dump this into my watering can and then also add more hot water. But I don't know if you can hear that, but it's kind of fizzing a little bit as the nutrients dissolve. Our water has a lot of calcium in it, so it already causes some of the iron to come out. So it's kind of funny, you go from a white powder to something that looks kind of like iced tea or some weak coffee maybe. But it smells like fertilizer. Alrighty, we're dissolving good. You can see how the water was kind of cloudy there at the beginning, and now it's starting to clear up. There we go. Okay, so I got part A in. You can probably hear the pump running in the other room. So it's running to kind of circulate everything and get it mixed. Now I'm going to start mixing up part B. With part A, you saw the water turn kind of cloudy. Part B, it's little pellets. So that's one scoop. Two scoops. Three. And four. And now we got a mixy. And this, it takes a little bit longer for it to dissolve, so. Alright, I just went in and pulled a water sample, and, well, I just noticed that my thermometer's Celsius, but we're a lot warmer. That's somewhere in the 60s, 65-ish. But the parts per million, it's looking pretty good also. So my next step is to measure the pH. Before I put away the EC meter, here's a little housekeeping tip. You want to rinse it off with ideally some distilled water, because those two little metal probes there are the business end of it. And basically what it's doing is it is measuring, as it says, it's measuring the electrical conductivity between those two probes. So it's a measure of basically how much dissolved salt is in the water. So in this case, the salts are the nutrients. Alright, I'm going to shoot for a perfect pour here. It's probably not going to happen, but I need exactly 5 milliliters of water in this test tube. Ooh, we are close. There we go. Spot on. And now 5 drops of the pH test solution. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we cap. And shaky, shaky. And I know it's going to be pretty alkaline. The tap water around here, it's got a lot of calcium in it. And yeah, we've got kind of a nice greenish color. So it's not quite as bad as I thought, and I just realized I'm looking at this, but you're not. So there we go. So that's not too bad. I'm around 6.5. If I had to take a guess based off that hue. So my next thing is to add some pH down to get us up into that target range. I just finished consulting my notes because I keep a spreadsheet of records for the lettuce grow. And according to the last time that I did a reset, which was my first time setting it up, the pH was exactly what it is now. So I feel pretty comfortable going off of the previous measurements and using the amount of pH down that I had to add then, which was 4.5 scoops. It is kind of interesting though that as it progresses, it seems like the water tends to become more alkaline, but at least initially, and maybe it's due to the growth phase of the plants and what nutrients they're pulling. I don't know. Chemistry is weird. But it seems like even though the water gets more alkaline, it actually takes less pH down to bring the pH back into range. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It's some weird chemistry balancing act when it comes to pH. Doing water titrations and stuff like that was something I was never too good at in chemistry. Alright, so I've chickened out and decided to split the difference and just start off with 2 scoops, let it go, and then measure the pH again, and then add additional scoops if I need to. Because the scoop for the pH down is, I'm not sure what size it is, but it is a lot tinier than 1 tablespoon. It might just be 1 teaspoon. But anyhow, if 4 teaspoons of this is enough to have a drastic effect on the pH, I don't want to be adding a lot of it and going all willy-nilly with it. Alright, so there's our 2 scoops. And now, just like the nutrients, we'll mixy. Maybe I should have went with my gut and added the amount of scoops that I had documented, because that's what I ended up adding in the end to get the pH within range. So now we're good to go on pH, and we can start adding plants. While I was waiting on the nutrients and the pH adjustments and everything, waiting on that to mix in the tank, I went ahead and added the grow cups back in, and I also blanked off the areas where I know for right now I'm not going to have any plants starting off. So I've got this tier and then this tier up here, which I'm actually going to be sowing the seeds for those tonight. So they'll probably be going in the next 2 weeks. But I do have these lower tiers and this upper tier and one here in the middle to fill in. Without plants in it, you can see how the water trickles right down along the back of the grow cups. So I have my seedlings right here, and now it's just a matter of popping the seedlings out and putting them in the grow cups and then popping those back into the tower. Now, getting the seedlings out of the trays can sometimes be a little bit fiddly. I've actually found that using the little plant tags to kind of help pop them up out works really well. But for this first one, I'm going to do a pea plant because it already has a nice strong stalk, and you can already see the roots coming out the back there. So it's just a matter of sliding it down into the cup, just like that, and then popping it in. So with this little tomato right here, I'm using 2 of the plant tags and popping it right up out there. And now just slide that in, and we're good. I got everything planted, or well, transplanted into the tower. So the last thing that I have to do tonight is sow the seeds for the last 2 rings. And what I'm going to do is it's actually going to be some of the same plants, but this way I get a staggered harvest. But what I have to use for this tower, I can't use like regular potting mix because little pieces of it would break off and would end up down in the tank. So I actually use this product that's called Root Riot. And again, not a sponsor, and we actually don't carry it in our stores either. I purchased it online. But what I do is I buy it in bulk. So this is 100 pellets, which this tower only holds 36. But I buy it in bulk. It actually comes pre-moistened. But what I do to store it is I'll take this bag, open it up, I lay them out to dry, and then my seed trays, my little seed trays actually hold 12 seedlings, which is the equivalent of 2 rings in the tower. So once the pellets dry out, I take them and bag them up in Ziploc baggies, 12 at a time, and whenever I need to use them, I just put some water into the bag, let it set for a day or so, and that rehydrates the pellets. And well, now I just need to get them into the tray and sow the seeds. So I'm going to be planting spinach, more pak choy, more black-seeded Simpson lettuce, and more butter French lettuce. And these trays, I reuse them, so I'll wash them out and reuse them. And also these little stick tags, you can just write on with a pencil and then erase them. Here's a close-up of one of the pellets. And they are made out of peat moss, but it has a binder in it that kind of turns it into almost like a little peat moss sponge. And they're kind of squishy, but they don't really come apart, which is ideal because I don't want pieces of this breaking off and going down into the reservoir. Up first, I'm going to be planting 3 pak choy plants. Oh, and I always forget how rolly the seeds are. They're basically perfect little spheres and they come pouring out. Okay, and what I do is I do a couple seeds per cell, and then I'll go back and thin them later once they sprout. Which the little pellets, they have a hole that's drilled in the middle of them, which is perfect for planting. Okay, so that was actually, I'll go different this time and stick the tag back there. That way I can actually see it while they're growing. And we can put the little top one right here to help hold in the moisture. And we're good to go. So once these start to sprout, I'll open up this little vent on the top and that'll start getting some of the moisture out. Two things that you really want to control with seedlings is both lighting and then also the amount of moisture. So too much moisture, it can cause them to kind of dampen off where you get like this little fuzzy root fuzz around the bottom, which isn't great. But also light. Seedlings need a ton of light. So I'll show you how I do my lighting setup initially. This is my starting grow light setup. So this has 4 LED bulbs in it, or well, tubes with LEDs. It has red and blue LEDs because that's the only wavelengths that plants need, is red light and blue light. So it has 4 of them. I set it on a 12-hour cycle, so it kicks on and off every 12 hours. And here in a few days, I should start seeing little sprouts. Speaking of lights and timers, the last thing that I need to do is reset the timers that control the hydroponics system. So it has 2 timers, one for the lights and then one for the water pump. So right now, as I've been setting this up, I just had the pump on continuous to help circulate the nutrients and kind of get everything mixed really well. But now I'm going to turn it off and get it set on its regular cycle. So normally when it's set up, the lights are running for 17 hours a day, and the pump, it runs on a cycle depending on whether it's daytime or nighttime. So whether the lights are on or the lights are off. When the lights are on, the pump runs for 15 minutes every hour. So it's on for 15 minutes and then off for 45 minutes. During the nighttime, it runs for 15 minutes every 90 minutes. So it's on for 15 minutes and then it's off for an hour and 15 minutes. And it just cycles back and forth between that. And the way that it's set up, it just uses a simple mechanical timer. So it's really easy to set up. And the great thing is I have both timers plugged into the same power strip. So if I have to unplug it, it keeps everything synchronized. So it's dead simple to set up and just kind of let it sit there and do its own thing. Systems like this make hydroponics at home really easy. So doing the reset and adding the nutrients and everything, that is about as hard as it gets as far as maintaining this. And that's something that you only have to do every 3 to 4 months. So it's really something awesome to look into, whether you buy a pre-built system like this or you build a homebrew hydroponics system. It's definitely something to look into if you're interested in growing things like leafy greens year-round. So here in West Virginia, it gets way too cold in the wintertime, in like the middle of December, January, and February to be growing lettuce outside. But this year, I was harvesting fresh veggies pretty much all winter long. So if you missed the previous 2 videos, you can check those out. In the last video, I completely took this apart and cleaned it. And in the first video, I kind of did a general introduction to how the system works. So we'll definitely be seeing more of the hydroponics system as I continue to use it. And probably one of these days, we'll be doing a cooking video using some of the produce from the hydroponics system. So until next time, keep growing. All right, thanks to the magic of the internet, it is now 2 weeks later, and the seedlings that I planted, they are ready to be transplanted over into the Lettuce Grow Tower. So I left 12 slots open, and I've got 12 seedlings right here. So let's take a look at the seedlings. So I've had these seedlings under my LED grow lights, and you can see I keep the lights pretty close. And what that does is it prevents stretching where the plants get too tall. The ones that I transplanted in, they had stretched a little bit, but not too bad. With them growing in the tower, the stalks on them will actually strengthen up, so it's more of a cosmetic issue than anything else. All right, so we've got pak choy, butter crunch lettuce, black-seeded Simpson leaf lettuce, I can't talk, and some spinach. So let's go ahead and pop these out and get them into the little cups. So I just need to remove the little cup that I have blocking it, and just pop these in. So here they are in the tower. And for some comparison on 2 weeks worth of growth in the hydroponics system, this is black-seeded Simpson leaf lettuce. And these are the ones that I just freshly transplanted over into the tower. And the ones that I put in 2 weeks ago were about the same size. So let's take a look at them now. There are a couple levels down below. So if we drop down, this is 2 weeks later on those same plants. So you can definitely tell a difference. And I'm going to give these probably another week. I could already start harvesting a couple leaves here and there, but you want to go really light with it. But probably within the next week to 2 weeks, I could start pretty much cutting off the entire plant and leaving about an inch or so, and then it'll grow back. With black-seeded Simpson and other leaf-type lettuces, you can kind of do a reoccurring harvest where you cut them back, then more grows out, and then you cut them back again. Something like the butter crunch lettuce, which I have right here, this is more of a thing that you just grow out and then harvest the entire plant all at once. So I've got these that are 2 weeks old, and let's see, directly down below them right here are the ones that I just moved over. So yeah, that's the difference in butter crunch over the course of 2 weeks. And then the same thing with the pak choy. So right here's what I just transplanted. Up here is the 2 week older version. And up here at the top of the tower, you can see that my dill, it is starting to branch out really nicely. So is the Swiss chard, but also this cilantro is really starting to look nice. So we're probably another week to 2 weeks out from being able to start harvesting cilantro, which I've got 2 cilantro plants, and with them, again, you can cut off the leaves, it'll grow back out, and you can continue to get multiple harvests. Same way with the dill, you can get multiple harvests from it. Which the dill I use to make salad dressing. So I do olive oil, honey, mustard, um, with a little bit of dill in it. So yeah, once again, until next time, keep growing. Alright, so that is the full reset of the hydroponics system. And yeah, it is a lot of work. Patty commented that, yeah, you could tell it took a lot of time, and I looked kind of tired there at the end of it because I started on it, pump troubles and everything slowed me down. But I started on it like 6 in the evening. I finished around midnight that night. And the entire reset I split into 2 days. So it was a Monday and a Tuesday, both evenings of working on that. But again, that's something that you only have to do. You only have to disassemble it and do all that once every 3 to 4 months. So about once a season. And in the meantime, all that you have to do is once every 1 to 2 weeks, you just have to kind of check the nutrients and the pH and kind of top off the water. So right now where I have little seedlings in it still and the plants are still kind of growing, it's only using a couple gallons of water a week. So I went for 2 weeks without doing any maintenance on it. And when I pulled a water sample, it had just used a little bit of the nutrients. So I actually didn't even add any nutrients last week. I just topped off the water and readjusted the pH because it had gotten a little bit alkaline. So I added more pH down to bring it back within range. So this week I'll probably check the water level again and check the EC level and probably add some nutrients this week, just to keep everything kind of growing and doing its thing. Patty also asked about those little peat pellets that I use. It's called Root Riot. Um, I do use those for stuff in the garden, but I also use like the Jiffy trays that I think we carry them in our stores. I'm not sure. I know we used to. But you can find them just about anywhere this time of year. But they're little compressed pellets of peat moss that you add water to. And it's kind of like those little dinosaur things that you had like when you were a kid and you drop them in some warm water and they puff up. The peat pellets are like the adult version of that. You just pour water into the tray and then they swell up and you can plant in them. And I also use those too. So right now I've got some leeks that are growing that I'm going to be transplanting out to my garden later, and they're growing in those type of pellets. And then I'm also starting right now some echinacea and butterfly weed that I'm going to be transplanting out into my meadow garden. Um, and all of those I'm doing in the Jiffy peat pellets. But later on, when I start doing my tomatoes and peppers for the garden, I'll probably start those in the Root Riot just because I've had good results with it with starting them for the hydroponic system. And that's another thing too, is I can also use the hydroponic system to start plants for the garden. Right now I have a tomato plant that's about 2 feet tall and has blooms on it in a pot setting next to the hydroponic system. And I started it there. It got about a foot tall, and I basically pulled it out, very carefully removed the basket from the roots, and then transplanted it over into soil. And I also have a pepper plant that's sitting in my kitchen windowsill. It's covered in blooms right now. And I did the same thing with it. I transplanted it from the hydroponic system over. And I did that when I did the reset, mainly because um, I wanted to free up all of the slots for new plants, and I didn't want to have to try to stuff those roots back down in. So I did that with about 3 or 4 plants out of the system. Um, but yeah, hydroponics, it is awesome. I recommend checking it out. It was something that I was kind of intimidated by, and going with this system, it really helped me kind of feel comfortable with it and get used to the whole process. So later on, I might branch out and try like a homebrew thing, but a pre-built system like this is a great way to go if you want to get into hydroponics, and it kind of gives you a head start on that learning curve. Um, the last thing that I want to take a look at today before we end the live stream is, of course, the weather forecast, because we're starting to get into the growing season right now. So you might be wanting to go out and prepare your flower beds, till up your garden, and different things like that. So the weather is important when it comes to that. So right now, I've been refreshing the weather throughout the live stream today. Um, right now, for Thursday, it keeps Microsoft, their weather thing, keeps flipping back and forth between partly sunny and rainy for tomorrow. Um, right now, it is pouring down the rain right outside my window. Um, but it's definitely going to be cooler tomorrow and probably a little bit wetter. So I'm hoping that we have a pretty dry day, because I've actually got some folks coming to work on my house. But this weekend is shaping up to be pretty nice. So it looks like the weather is going to be great on Friday. And then also Saturday and Sunday, it's going to drop down and be cooler. Saturday looks like kind of peak grass mowing day. It's going to be right around 70, which is a nice, comfortable temperature to be outside doing that. And then Sunday, it's going to be a little bit cooler. Um, and also, right now, we're in a waxing moon phase. So it's a good time to start planting above ground crops. So if you're starting seeds inside, right now is a pretty good time to do that. Um, so if you're kind of old school and you farm by the moon, I always like to kind of use that kind of as a general rule of thumb. So when the moon is waxing, that's when you plant above ground crops. When it's waning, that's when you do below ground crops. So, well, that is. Oh, I lost my mouse. There it is. That is all that I have for this week's kind of gigantic episode of Bob's Live. Um, Next week, I don't have my notes here to tell me what we're going to be doing, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be awesome. But long term, this summer, I am working on lining up some kind of getting out and visiting places for Bob's Live. That is something that I've wanted to do. I had it planned going into 2020, and then, of course, things happened and all of those plans got scrapped. But that was kind of my original vision for Bob's Live, was at least once or twice a month getting out, visiting different farms, gardens, nature preserves, different things like that. Getting out from not just out into our greenhouse, but getting out into the area and checking out all the awesome plant related stuff in our area. Because here in West Virginia, we live in one of the most biodiverse areas on the East Coast. Uh, so we, you know, we've got just tons of things that we can look at and explore, and kind of expand beyond just gardening, into farming and other aspects of plants that are really awesome. And Patty says, see you at the spring color tour. So, yeah, if you were lucky to nab a ticket, again, because of current situation in the world, we had to limit how many people we could have come, uh, due to being able to maintain our distance and all that good stuff. Uh, so if you missed out on getting a ticket for the spring color tour this Saturday, um, next week we are going to be doing a virtual color tour. So it's going to be streamed just on YouTube by itself and hosted over on our website. And later on this week, I'm going to get the information up for it. Um, so it'll be available. And that way you can kind of bookmark the page and be ready for it. And of course, it'll be pre-recorded or be recorded as I'm doing it live, just like this show. So that way you can watch it again later. And well, I am starting to ramble, so I'm going to end this week's episode of Bob's Live. And until next time, keep growing.